James Bay.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I always say what a great honor it is to rise in a house such as this, chosen by the people of Timmins, James Bay. But I have to say that I am less and less proud every time I'm asked to stand up, because I don't know how to tell young Canadians to believe in democracy when they watch this dismal gong show day after day. That we're in a crisis of democracy around the world. A moment when Canada, which was always a land known for its tolerance, its fairness, sits in this dysfunctional, broken crisis. It's not a natural break. I mean, the leader who lives in the Stornoway mansion says everything's broken. He's making it broken. To have 2 months of a parliament unable to work at a time when we're facing the threats coming in from Donald Trump, when we're facing the Russians moving to hypersonic missiles, when we're facing a larger crisis that Canada needs to be seen, and we're sitting here playing these really stupid, dismal games. Now, I want to say, having been here 20 years, I don't want to say, oh, there was a glory days when, we were all smarter and we were all like wiser and we all, rose to the highest standards. In fact, when I first got elected, it really reminded me of being in a new school in grade 9 and walking to a cafeteria and having people throw food at you. But there was a difference. And the difference was that for all the silliness and the mediocrity, is that we knew that we were there at the end of the day for something bigger than us and our parties. Just the other night, I was walking down Elgin Street, and a former Conservative cabinet minister, David MacDonald, stopped me on the street. What a gentleman. He was in the Joe Clark government. And he talked to me about his concern about Canada's democracy at this time. And he talked about those days, and those were serious days, the days of Reaganomics, the days of the mass unemployment, and we talk about affordability issues now when interest rates were hitting 18 and 21% and people were losing their homes across Canada. We never saw the darkness that's being generated now. And he talked to me about being in the Joe Clark cabinet and finding people on the Liberal side to work with, calling Ed Broadbent to work with him. But that's not what we have now. So instead of the grade 9 cafeteria, this is kind of like Beavis and Butthead go to the Lord of the Flies. And I say that because for 2 months we've sat and watched these silly, stupid games. And it's like, so today they got this idea, what we're going to do is we're going to get the leader of the NDP's words that he'll defend workers, and we'll use that, and then we'll force them to have a Christmas election. And they pat themselves on the back because they think that that's actually offering something. 2 solid months of nothing getting done. I have been partisan my whole life. I have been in opposition my whole life. But I know there are moments when I put that aside for the good of the country. We need the fall economic statement to move forward. We have First Nation issues and monies that are being held up so they can play their gong show Canada's broken. I know multiple copper projects that are not going to go ahead and investment's going to go to Malaysia. And you know what the happy sock puppets tell people? Well, don't worry. When our leader gets in, we'll fix it. They want to break it. They want to burn the house to the ground. I say this because last night, Amnesty International released a damning report on the genocide that's happening in Gaza. These are the big issues that we're facing. The Amnesty International report comes on the findings of the UN that hospital workers are being targeted and murdered deliberately, which are crimes against humanity. And the International Criminal Court has sent forward indictments, both against Hamas and against the key leaders in the Israeli government, for crimes against humanity. Canada was one of the founding partners in the creation of the International Criminal Court. Yeah, we might have been small, but we stepped up. During the apartheid regime and the fight to bring down that oppressive, hateful regime, Canada played a part. And yes, a Conservative Prime Minister stood up for the notion of international human rights and law. He did that. In Rwanda, in the face of a horrific genocide, it was Canadians on the front lines. When they were abandoned by the UN, abandoned by Europe, it was Canadians who were there to stop the genocide. In Srebrenica and Yugoslavia, Canada played a role. And so when Canada is confronted with the International Criminal Court finding first against Vladimir Putin, which is a very important finding, the Conservatives came in and voted multiple times against support for Ukraine. Shame. To burn the house to the ground. Shame. And when the International Criminal Court found that a genocide is being committed against people, what did the member who lives in the 19-room mansion in Stornoway say? He said it was harebrained and woke. Shame. This man is not fit for public office. Not at all. I have never said that about anyone who's ever walked in this house. But a man who looks at the role that Canada played at the International Criminal Court and says it's harebrained and woke, he's not fit. I say this given the threats posed by Donald Trump, threats against the basic democratic order, because if the Americans lose the democratic order, we all lose the democratic order. When we see that he's posted a Putin troll to be in charge of intelligence, when he's posting a man for the head of the FBI to target his political enemies, this is the undermining of democracy. And his attack on Canada, a 25% tariff, threatens serious economic harm. And we're going to have to stand up as a nation. We're going to have to stand up with some unity. And we're going to have to stand up for Canadian values. We can't demonize the immigrant and migrant people who are coming here. We can't use them to appease Donald Trump. But what Donald Trump's talking about, he's talking about fentanyl. He's accusing Canada of being the supply chain for the fentanyl crisis in America, when we know that it was OxyContin from the United States that created the crisis here. Exactly. And the huge death rates that we're still suffering. Mm-hmm. And the fentanyl crisis is an unprecedented crisis. And what does the guy who lives in a 19-room mansion say? He claims that the Prime Minister legalized fentanyl and put it on the streets. You know, we have things about decorum. I can't call that man a liar. Mm-hmm. That wouldn't be civic. But he can use the deaths of thousands of people. Now, he does that normally, but it's different when Donald Trump is accusing Canada of being a fentanyl chain into the United States, and the impacts will be 25% tariffs. That's when you put aside your pitiful little partisan games and say there's a bigger issue here. Mm-hmm. But no, because he'll burn our country to the ground to score a point. Yeah. So you can bet that Fox News will be having him on. And you can bet that the conservative sock puppets who repeat obediently these falsehoods will be quoted again and again and again to justify 25% tariffs that will cause economic havoc. You know, we've been through much worse times, Mr. Speaker, economically in that, but there was always a notion that we would come together on the key elements across party lines. I disagree with this government on 1,000 things, and I'll fight them on 1,000 things, but I will put the security of my nation first. Hear, hear. That was why I was elected. But this burn our country to the ground approach that he's using with Donald Trump is the way he went after doctors in the opioid crisis. He named doctors who then got death threats. Doctors who are on the front lines. What's this guy ever been on the front line of? Other than getting the free food in the House of Commons in the lobby. He's certainly, I've seen him in the front line there. But he attacked medical doctors and they got death threats. Shame. And then he attacked independent journalism. Of course, he attacks the CBC. He attacked the CTV, had workers fired for doing their job. Shame. Mm-hmm. He attacked Rachel Gilmore from Global, who was fired, and she received death threats. That's right. Because an independent media is a threat to the falsehoods of a party that lives on bumper sticker slogans. That's right. If you run an entire party based on dumbed-down slogans that they all happily repeat, exactly, you can't have an independent media. So they attacked CTV. They attacked CBC. He attacked Canadian Press. He attacked the Toronto Star. He's attacking fundamental checks and balances in our system. But that's not all. Last week, he went after municipal councillors.
Shame.
Mm-hmm. You know, it's really hard right now to encourage people to participate in democracy. And if we don't encourage good people to participate in democracy, democracy doesn't exist.
That's right.
And I have never, ever, ever, ever seen a situation where some guy whose only job apparently was a Dairy Queen when he was young, and then as a political tack dog for the rest of his life, went out and stated that Canada's municipal councillors, he said that they were greedy. He said they were BSing the public, that they were swimming in money, and that he would cut the taps off. And I do know, Speaker, municipal councillors who do get death threats for doing the job. We know that the mayor of Gatineau just stepped down. She didn't want to do it anymore. I've talked to councillors who say it's not worth representing people. If those people don't step up, we don't have a democracy. And yet the member for Stornoway decided that it was Canada's mayors and councillors that are now his new enemy, because he gets bored with his old enemies. You cannot run a democracy, Mr. Speaker, when one level of government decides that it's going to turn the dogs on another level. We can disagree, but I mean, you'd have to be some kind of special to be able to blame every municipal councillor and every mayor and every community in this country for causing the problem of housing when he's got no plan for housing.
Exactly.
Now, his plan for housing was to take out Patrick Brown.
Yep.
That was the plan. And now we're seeing from CSIS more and more evidence of interference that took place. We just learned from RadioCan that Patrick Brown's head of the campaign, the member for Calgary Nose Hill, was approached by representatives of the Modi government to pull out support. We know that he got, 170,000 memberships in the last 48 hours? I ran for party leader. I know that just isn't done. That's something you generate in the back room. CSIS has been raising question after question after question how that man got into Stornoway, how they took down Aaron O'Toole. And I got to admit, I had lunch with Aaron the other day. He says, "You keep saying nice things about me in the House." I said, "I know, Aaron. Once you're gone, I'll be nice to you." But I said, "Aaron, you would have been a good prime minister. Aaron is a man of dignity. Aaron and I disagree on a lot of things, but Aaron served his country and will always serve his country." And he was taken down. So we need answers on the interference. Because the guy who lives in Stornoway, who says people can't afford to eat, and then tells his people to vote against food for children, the guy who's supposed to help us in the mental health crisis, who told his people to vote against a suicide hotline,
Shame.
the man who ran on an election on a HST break and then voted against it, Mr. Axe the Tax, more like Mr. Axe the Facts. So, you know, at Stornoway, it's $170,000 in repairs. It's $190,000 a year, and he gets a chef.
Wow.
That's what he lives with in a 19-room mansion. I guess taking down Aaron O'Toole was worth it. So here's my thing. If he really was serious, why don't we forego the chef? Now, I know forego is a big word for conservatives. It's kind of an older word. And it might not fit well on a bumper sticker. How about we'll just say, F the chef? So this is my call to the member who lives in Stornoway. If you're serious at all about anything, F the chef. I'd put that on a bumper sticker. Don't you think people would support it?
Hear, hear.
F the chef.
Hear, hear.
And then maybe we could forego the guy who's living off the chef.
Yeah, I like it.
But the guy who lives in Stornoway doesn't, it's too big. I'm going to work on it. I'll come back to you next week. I'll have a better one. Anyways, Mr. Speaker, I know that my time is going short, and I'll be here all week. If you need me for anything, you just ask me, Mr. Speaker. But I do want to bring forward an amendment at this time. That where is the leader? What's this? Where's my amendment? I'll keep talking. Then get me an amendment. Get me an amendment. I got how much time left? They never let me do amendments. Like, seriously, Speaker, in all my time here, have I ever done anything procedural that you can remember? I haven't. So anyways, let's just keep going back on the on the guy who lives in Stornoway. Now, here's another fact that the member, I'm not mad at all the Conservatives. I have great respect for some. The member for Wellington Halton Hills, for example, who said in the Globe and Mail on October 23rd, 2024, that there's a reason he may not get a security clearance, and it's because security clearances involve a rigorous process that includes background checks on family members, credit, criminal checks, and intrusive questions about one's sexual partners or whether they ever use drugs. I didn't say that. A Conservative said that. And he said the Conservatives fear that would be used for politically motivated purposes. So I'll end on this. What the heck is in that closet in Stornoway that he's so afraid of that he not only won't or he can't get a security clearance? We need to know what's in that closet because Canadians are paying the cost of that closet and the chef who feeds the guy who's got stuff hidden in that closet. So here we are, Mr. Speaker. Round 2. I move, seconded by the member for North Island Powell River, that the motion be amended, A, by adding the words right to strike, the following question mark. 1, whereas the NDP leader said the Conservative leader has, quote, deep connections to billionaires and CEOs. 2, whereas the NDP leader said, quote, the Conservative leader voted against giving kids dental care despite having publicly paid dental care for nearly 2 decades. Wow. 3, whereas the NDP leader said, quote, the Conservative leader would use his power to cut health care and other services that people rely on. B, by replacing all the words after the words, the House proclaims, quote, with the following, it's disappointment that for decades Liberals and Conservatives have stacked the deck for corporate CEOs against working Canadians. I'll be here all week. I'm glad that at the end the Conservatives showed up, but I'll send them the YouTube clips. Thank you.
Good.